Hi everyone. Today we will discuss the war period for the Ottomans starting from 1911 and lasting in 1918, including the Tripolitana War, the Balkan Wars, and the First World War. The Ottoman-Italian War was undertaken by Italy to gain colonies in North Africa by conquering the Turkish provinces of Tripolitana and Cyrenaica, modern Libya. The conflict upset the precarious international balance of power just prior to World War I by revealing the weakness of Ottomans and within Italy unleashed the nationalist expansionist sentiment that guided government policy in the following decades. Italy took advantage of a period of international uncertainty following the Moroccan crisis of 1911 to achieve its long-desired goal of establishing a colony in North Africa. Using the pretext of the infringement of Italian interests in the two provinces, the Italian government issued an ultimatum to the Ottoman government on September 28, 1911, and on the next day declared war. Italian forces quickly occupied the towns of Tripoli, Derna, and Benghazi, but unexpected resistance on the part of the Muslim population forced the Italian commander, General Carlo Gianeve, to confine operations to the coastal areas. In May 1912, Italian naval forces occupied Rhodos and some of the Dodecanese islands of the Turkish coast, but the war remained at a stalemate until a successful Italian offensive in North Africa from July to October 1912. Turkey, now menaced by the Balkan states, sought peace. By the terms of the Treaty of Lausanne, also called Treaty of Ushi, October 18, 1912, Turkey conceded its rights over Tripoli and Cyrenaica to Italy. Although Italy agreed to evacuate the Dodecanese, its forces continued to occupy the islands. The Balkan Wars followed the Ottoman-Italian War. It was fought between the members of the Balkan League, Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro, and the Ottoman Empire. The Balkan League was formed under Russian auspices in the spring of 1912 to take Macedonia away from Turkey, which was already involved in a war with Italy. The League was able to field a combined force of 750,000 men. Montenegro opened hostilities by declaring war on Ottoman Empire on October 8, 1912, and the other members of the League followed suit 10 days later. The Balkan allies were soon victorious. In Thrace, the Bulgarians defeated the main Ottoman forces, advancing to the outskirts of Istanbul and laying siege to Adrianople, Edirne in Turkish. In Macedonia, the Serbian army achieved a great victory at Kumanovo that enabled it to capture Bitola and to join forces with the Montenegrins and enter Skopje. The Greeks, meanwhile, occupied Salonika and advanced on Ioannina. In Albania, the Montenegrins besieged Shkodër and the Serbs entered Durrës. The Ottoman collapse was so complete that all parties were willing to conclude an armistice on December 3, 1912. A peace conference was begun in London, but after a coup d'etat by the Young Turks in Constantinople in January 1914, war with the Ottomans was resumed. Again, the Allies were victorious. Ioannina fell to the Greeks and Adrianople to the Bulgarians. Under a peace treaty signed in London on May 30, 1913, the Ottoman Empire lost almost all of its remaining European territory, including all of Macedonia and Albania. Albanian independence was insisted upon by the European powers, and Macedonia was to be divided among the Balkan allies. The Second Balkan War began when Serbia, Greece, and Romania quarreled with Bulgaria over the division of the joint conquest in Macedonia. On June 1, 1913, Serbia and Greece formed an alliance against Bulgaria, and the war began on the night of June 29, 1913, when King Ferdinand of Bulgaria ordered his troops to attack Serbian and Greek forces in Macedonia. The Bulgarians were defeated. However, a peace treaty was signed between the combatants on August 10, 1913. Under the terms of the treaty, Greece and Serbia divided up most of Macedonia between themselves, leaving Bulgaria with only a small part of the region. As a result of the Balkan Wars, Greece gained southern Macedonia as well as the island of Crete. Serbia gained the Kosovo region and extended into northern and central Macedonia. Albania was made an independent state under a German prince. The Ottoman armies, benefiting from the conflict among the Balkan states, managed to recapture the city of Edirne from the Bulgarians. The political consequences of the wars were considerable. Bulgaria, frustrated in Macedonia, looked to Austria for support, while Serbia, which had been forced by Austria to give up its Albanian conquest, regarded Vienna with greater hostility than ever. The heightened tensions in the Balkans reached their climax in World War I. The Ottoman Empire entered the war as an ally of the Central Powers, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Bulgaria. When expectations of a short war proved unfounded and the campaign on the Western Front developed into trench warfare by late 1914, the importance of the Ottoman contribution in German eyes increased. On the Caucasus front, the Russians were the first to attack in November, but the Ottoman army managed to stop them. A counteroffensive under the personal command of Enver Pasha started at the end of December. After a successful start, the Ottomans were heavily defeated at Sarıkamış on the road to city of Kars in January. Only 12,000 out of 90,000 troops survived, most of them dying of cold and exhaustion, crossing a mountain ridge in the dead of winter. The military fiasco left eastern Anatolia open to a Russian advance, which duly materialized when the weather improved. It also marked the beginning of the suppression of the Ottoman Albanians, still a controversial issue 100 years later. The Armenian community formed an important part of the population of the eastern Anatolian provinces. Estimates of the total number of Armenians in the empire vary, but a number of around 1,500,000, some 10% of the population of Ottoman Anatolia, is probably a reasonable estimate. At the outbreak of the war, Armenian nationalists saw in a Russian victory their chance to achieve the establishment of an Armenian state in eastern Anatolia. Russian propaganda encouraged these aspirations. A few thousand Armenians joined the Russian army. There were Armenian desertions from the Ottoman army and guerrilla activity behind the Ottoman lines. Confronted with this situation, the Ottoman cabinet, on the initiative of the Interior Minister Talat Pasha, decided to relocate the entire Armenian population of the war zone to Zor, in the heart of the Syrian desert. The relocation, or tehcir, was carried through in 1915 and 1916, and it resulted in the death of enormous numbers of Armenians. While this is an undisputed fact, there are some controversies on 3 points. The first is the military necessity of the operation. The second is over the numbers. Turkish historians have put number of deaths as low as 200,000, while the Armenians have sometimes claimed 10 times as many. The third and most important controversy concerns intent and whether genocide was committed. The Turkish side and its supporters claim that The situation in eastern Anatolia was one of the intercommunal warfare in which Armenian bands and Kurdish tribes struggled for control. In January, there was also a first attempt to take the Suez Channel, when 20,000 troops crossed the Sinai Desert in 10 days, but their attempt to cross or cut off the canal was defeated. Nor was there an anti-British insurrection in Egypt to support the Holy War, as had been expected. The Ottoman army withdrew to southern Palestine with relatively light casualties. A second attempt to attack the channel in 1916 also failed. After these first Ottoman attempts, the initiative lay squarely with the Entente powers. The main thrust of the Entente was aimed at the Dardanelles. The assumption was that forcing the Straits and occupying Istanbul would at one stroke cut off the Ottoman Empire from German aid and make it possible to supply and strengthen the Russian front. A first attempt to force the Straits was made during February and March of 1915. This was a purely naval operation in which French and British warships tried to silence the Ottoman batteries and then to sweep the minefields in the Dardanelles. Due to the heavy losses, the operation was cancelled by the British, and it was decided to launch an amphibious attack involving landings on the coast of Asia Minor and on the Gallipoli Peninsula. Neither the first landings in April nor the subsequent ones in August could bring breakthrough by January 1916. Thus, the Entente troops had evacuated their positions. For the Ottomans, this victory over Britain was a source of tremendous national pride, but at the same time, the battles at Gallipoli were by far the most costly of the war for them. The other major success for the Ottoman armies also came in 1916. The British Indian Expeditionary Force, which had been moving up the Tigris in the direction of Baghdad, was surrounded and forced to surrender at Kut el-Imara in July. 13,000 prisoners of war were interned in Anatolia. The Ottoman divisions did not only fight on Ottoman territory. At the request of the German General Staff, they were also sent to assist the Germans and Austrians in Galicia and the Bulgarians in Macedonia. The British managed to capture Baghdad, however, Gaza and Jerusalem in 1917. When an Ottoman army benefiting from the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917 attempted to crush the newly formed the Republic of Transcaucasia, composed of anti-Bolshevik groups in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. The Russian Revolution had given a new impetus to pan-Turkish ideas, in fact, and Enver Pasha himself now strongly favored the idea of a new empire built on union with the Turkic areas in Central Asia to replace the areas lost in the Near East. When the Transcaucasian Republic collapsed in May 1918, the Germans, who were primarily interested in access to the Baku oil fields, tried to restrain the Ottomans, but Enver Pasha pressed on and the Ottoman troops occupied Azerbaijan in September. By the time the Ottoman army entered Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, the war had already been lost. From August onwards, the German army in France was forced to retreat. On 20 September, the British army made its decisive breakthrough on the Palestinian front. Bulgaria, which had joined the Central Powers in 1915 and had formed a vital link between Germany, Austria, and the Ottoman Empire, was defeated by a joint British-French army from Salonika on 29 September. The Bulgarians surrendered on 2 October. The Unionist government in Ottoman Empire now realized that it had no choice but to sue for an armistice. After some preliminary talks, an armistice, namely Armistice of Mudros, dated 31 October 1918, was signed between the Ottoman government and the British. Thus, the First World War ended for the Ottoman Empire.